The missile lock tone screamed in Emma Lane's ears at exactly the moment she realized she'd made a terrible mistake. 2 seconds ago, she'd been hunting, invisible, predatory. The perfect ambush position at 42,000 feet with 6 enemy fighters below her, completely unaware that death was diving toward them at Mach 1.8. 1 second ago, she'd fired her first aim 120 and watched it track perfectly toward the lead enemy aircraft. Now, her radar warning receiver was howling like a wounded animal because 4 more enemy fighters, ones that shouldn't have been there, ones that intelligence had completely missed, had just achieved lock on her from above and behind. "Ghost, break left! 4 bandits on your 6, missiles in the air!" Emma didn't think. She reacted. She slammed the stick left and forward, simultaneously killing the throttles and deploying speed brakes. The F-22 Raptor snap-rolled inverted and dove, shedding 400 knots of airspeed in 3 seconds while pulling negative Gs that made her helmet slam against the canopy. 2 missiles flashed past where she'd been a heartbeat ago. They'd been tracking her heat signature, her radar cross-section, her everything. They'd had perfect firing solutions. They'd also assumed she'd do what every fighter pilot was trained to do: break level and try to outturn the missiles. Emma had stopped following normal training a long time ago. She rolled upright at 38,000 feet, afterburners lit, accelerating back through the sound barrier while her radar painted a tactical picture that made her blood run cold. 10 enemy fighters, not 6, 10. And they weren't random patrol. They'd been waiting. This was a trap. "Ghost, this is Overwatch. You need to egress immediately. You're outnumbered 5-1, and they knew you were coming." Emma's finger found the trigger. "Overwatch, Ghost. If I egress, those fighters intercept our strike package. Marines die. Mission fails. Ghost, you can't engage 10 aircraft solo. Watch me." She selected the original 6 fighters, still unaware that their ambush had just become a knife fight, and fired her second aim 120, then her third, then her fourth. 3 missiles in 5 seconds, 3 enemy aircraft that thought they were hunters, suddenly becoming prey. The first missile impacted before they even knew they were being engaged. The fighter exploded in a fireball visible from 50 miles away. The second and third missiles found their targets 3 seconds later. 2 more fireballs, 2 more kills, 3 enemy aircraft destroyed in 8 seconds, 7 remaining, and all of them now knew exactly where she was. "Ghost, you just painted yourself for every fighter in the sky. They're all vectoring toward you." Emma checked her weapons display. 3 missiles remaining, 480 rounds in the cannon, 7 enemy fighters closing from multiple vectors. The math was bad. The position was worse. She was outnumbered, surrounded, and had just announced her presence to everyone. She smiled. "Overwatch, Ghost. 7 bandits, 3 missiles, 1 cannon, 17 minutes until the strike package arrives." "Ghost, those odds are irrelevant." "Ghost, engaging." She rolled inverted and pulled toward the nearest threat, the F-22 responding like it was reading her mind. And somewhere in the back of her consciousness, she was aware that the next 17 minutes would either make her a legend or kill her. Probably both. This was Emma Lane. Call sign: Ghost. The most classified F-22 pilot in the United States Air Force, 11 confirmed kills in 3 previous deployments, about to either set a record or become a statistic. The enemy was vectoring toward her from 4 different angles, coordinating their attack, using numerical superiority to create an impossible tactical situation. They didn't know that impossible was her specialty. 48 hours earlier, Emma had been in a briefing room at Nellis Air Force Base, looking at satellite imagery that showed a Marine reconnaissance unit pinned down in hostile territory with enemy forces closing from 3 sides. Major Ryan Torch Keller stood at the front of the room, laser pointer tracing enemy positions. "The Marines have been compromised. Enemy knows their position and is moving to engage. We've got 12 hours before they're overrun. Emma studied the map. The Marines were in a valley with limited cover, surrounded by high ground occupied by enemy forces with surface-to-air missiles and heavy weapons. Any rescue attempt would fly into a kill zone. Strike package is 4FA-18S, call sign Dagger Flight, Torch continued. They'll provide close air support for the extraction. But intelligence shows enemy fighters in the region, potentially 15 to 20 aircraft. Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Blade Martinez, the strike package leader, spoke up. 15 to 20 enemy fighters against 4 Super Hornets? That's not a mission, that's suicide. Which is why Ghost launches first, Torch said, looking at Emma. You'll sanitize the airspace before Daggerflight arrives, kill the enemy fighters, clear the sky, make it safe for the rescue. Emma nodded slowly. 1 F-22 against 20 fighters. That's optimistic. Intelligence says most of them are older aircraft, inferior training. You'll have every advantage. Emma had been in combat long enough to know that intelligence was often wrong, and enemies were rarely inferior when you were actually fighting them. But the Marines needed extraction. The strike package needed protection. Someone had to clear the sky. That someone was always her. When do I launch? 6 hours. Get some rest. This one's going to be intense. Now, 30,000 feet over hostile territory with 7 enemy fighters closing on her position and missiles in the air, Emma was reminded that intense had been an understatement. She fired her 5th missile at the closest threat, an enemy fighter diving toward her from 11 o'clock high. Fox 3. The AMRAAM came off the rail and tracked, its active radar guiding it toward the target with mechanical precision. The enemy pilot saw it coming and broke hard, throwing chaff and flares, executing perfect defensive maneuvers. The missile didn't care about perfect. It adjusted, compensated, and detonated 15 meters from the target. Shrapnel shredded the fighter's left wing. The aircraft went into an uncontrolled spin. Kill number 4. Emma immediately rolled right and pulled, vectoring toward 2 fighters that were trying to bracket her from opposite sides. They were coordinating their attack, forcing her to choose which threat to defend against. She chose both. She fired her 6th missile at the fighter to her left, while simultaneously rolling inverted and diving toward the fighter on her right. The left side fighter saw the missile, broke off his attack to defend, and died 3 seconds later, when the AMRAAM caught him in the turn. Kill number 5. The right side fighter watched his wingman die and hesitated for half a second. Natural human reaction to seeing your partner explode. Half a second was all Emma needed. She rolled upright, lined up the shot, and fired her 7th and final missile. Fox 3, Winchester missiles. The enemy pilot tried to run. The AMRAAM was faster. Another explosion, another kill. 6 enemy fighters destroyed in 90 seconds. 4 remaining. 0 missiles. Just the cannon now. Ghost Overwatch. Jesus Christ. 6 kills in 90 seconds. Who are you? Emma didn't answer. She was too busy trying not to die. The remaining 4 enemy fighters had figured out she was out of missiles. They'd counted her shots, seen her weapons bays empty. Now they were closing, trying to get into gun range where numbers mattered more than technology. Emma checked her fuel. She'd been in afterburner extensively. Fuel state was getting critical. She had maybe 10 minutes before she'd need to head home regardless of whether the mission was complete. 10 minutes to kill 4 aircraft with just the cannon. She selected the first target, a fighter trying to get on her tail from 7 o'clock low. She broke hard left, using the F-22's thrust vectoring to execute a turn that shouldn't have been aerodynamically possible. The enemy pilot tried to follow. His aircraft couldn't match the turn radius. Emma ended up on his 6 o'clock before he understood what had happened. She squeezed the trigger. The M61 Vulcan cannon roared, 20-millimeter rounds screaming downrange at 6,000 rounds per minute. Her first burst was 2 seconds, 120 rounds. 40 rounds hit the enemy fighter. The aircraft disintegrated, pieces tumbling through the sky. Kill number 7. Emma immediately rolled inverted and pulled, tracking the second fighter that was trying to run. She caught him 3 seconds later, fired a 1-second burst, 60 rounds, and the fighter's tail section exploded. The pilot ejected. 8 kills, 300 rounds remaining, 2 enemy fighters still alive. Ghost Overwatch. Strike package is 10 minutes out. Can you hold? Emma looked at her fuel gauge. Overwatch Ghost. Fuel state is critical. I've got maybe 5 minutes. Ghost. If you don't hold, those last 2 fighters intercept the strike package. Marines don't get extracted. Emma watched the 2 remaining enemy fighters on her radar. They were running, heading back toward their airspace, probably low on fuel themselves and smart enough to know that staying in this fight was suicide. But if they reached their base, they could rearm and come back. Intercept Dagger flight, kill Americans. Emma made a decision that violated every fuel management protocol ever written. Overwatch Ghost. I'm pursuing. Ghost engaging. Ghost. Negative. You don't have the fuel to pursue and make it home. Then I'll land somewhere else. Ghost out. She lit the afterburners and went after them. The 2 enemy fighters saw her coming and split. Standard defensive tactic. Force the pursuer to choose one target while the other escapes. Emma chose both. She dove after the fighter heading north, accelerating to Mach 1.6, closing the gap with predatory efficiency. The enemy pilot was running at maximum speed, probably praying his fuel would last long enough to reach safety. At 2 miles, Emma got firing position. She squeezed the trigger for a 3-second burst, 180 rounds. The burst tore through the fighter's engine section. Fire erupted. The aircraft fell from the sky trailing smoke. Kill number 9, 120 rounds remaining, 1 enemy fighter left. Emma immediately reversed course, vectoring toward the second fighter that was now 10 miles away and still running. Her fuel warning light came on. She had maybe 2 minutes of flight time remaining. Then the engines would flame out, and she'd be gliding a $150 million fighter into hostile territory. Ghost Overwatch, your fuel state is critical. RTB immediately. Overwatch, 1 bandit remaining. If I let him go, he reports everything. They'll know our tactics, know our capabilities. That information kills Americans next week. Ghost, if you run out of fuel, you die today. Emma didn't answer. She was too focused on the intercept calculation. Distance to target versus fuel, remaining versus closure rate versus time to firing position. The math was brutal. She'd reach firing range with maybe 30 seconds of fuel remaining. Maybe. She pushed the throttles to maximum, the engines drinking fuel at catastrophic rates, and watched the range close. 5 miles, 4 miles, 3 miles. Her low fuel warning was now accompanied by an audible alarm. The computer was telling her she'd already stayed too long. Time to leave was 5 minutes ago. 2 miles. She got tone, firing solution, 1 mile. She squeezed the trigger and held it down. Her final 120 rounds screamed toward the enemy fighter. She walked the stream of tracers across his aircraft from tail to wing root. The fighter exploded. Kill number 10. Emma released the trigger and immediately nosed over, heading for emergency airspeed while her fuel gauge showed essentially empty. Overwatch Ghost. All bandits destroyed. 10 confirmed kills. I need a tanker and I need it now. Ghost Overwatch. Nearest tanker is 60 miles southwest. Can you make it? Emma did quick math. 60 miles, nearly empty tanks, engines that were about to quit. Overwatch Ghost. That's going to be close. The next 8 minutes were some of the longest of Emma's career. She flew at minimum fuel consumption speed, managing every ounce of thrust, gliding when she could, praying the winds were favorable. The engines quit 40 miles from the tanker. Overwatch Ghost. Flame out on both engines. I'm gliding. Copy Ghost. Tanker is vectoring toward you at maximum speed. Estimate 12 miles to intercept. Emma watched her altitude bleed away. At 35,000 feet, she had maybe 10 minutes of glide time before she'd need to eject. The F-22's emergency power unit kicked in, giving her partial hydraulics and enough electrical power to keep the flight controls working. But without engines, she was just an expensive glider. Ghost Overwatch. Tanker has you visual, 6 miles. Emma could see the tanker now, a KC-135 that had broken every speed regulation getting to her position. The boom operator was already extending the refueling boom. Tanker Ghost. I'm a glider. One shot at this. Copy Ghost. We'll make it work. The tanker slowed to just above stall speed. Emma maneuvered behind it, using what little control authority she had to position herself under the boom. At 28,000 feet, the boom made contact with her receptacle. Contact. Transfer in progress. Emma watched fuel flow into her tanks. 20 seconds, 40 seconds, 1 minute. Ghost, you've got enough for restart. Light 'em up. Emma initiated engine restart procedures. The right engine spooled up first, then the left. Both engines stabilized. Overwatch Ghost. Engines restarted. I'm mission capable. Returning to station. Negative Ghost. Your Winchester on weapons and fuel state is still marginal. RTB. Emma checked her tactical display. Dagger flight was approaching the combat zone, the sky she'd cleared at such cost. Overwatch. Those Marines still need extraction. I'm staying until the job's done. A different voice came on the radio. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, Dagger Lead. Ghost, this is Dagger Lead. We're reading your mission performance. 10 bandits destroyed. 0 friendly losses. You cleared the sky. We've got it from here. Dagger Ghost, just making sure you know the sky is clear. All enemy air assets are destroyed. Copy that, Ghost. And hey, thanks for showing up. You just saved a lot of lives today. Emma turned for home, climbing to altitude, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. 10 kills, empty fuel tanks, 1 impossible mission accomplished. The landing was routine after everything that had come before. Emma taxied to her parking spot where maintenance crews were waiting with expressions ranging from awe to disbelief. Major Keller was there, along with Colonel Martinez, who'd flown the extraction mission. Behind them, a crowd of pilots and ground crew who'd been following the engagement on the tactical net. Major Lane, Keller said as Emma climbed down from the cockpit. 10 confirmed kills, single engagement, against planned enemy defenses plus additional fighters that shouldn't have been there. You just set a record that's probably never going to be broken. Emma pulled off her helmet. The Marines make it out? All of them, safe and heading home, because you cleared the sky. Colonel Martinez stepped forward. Ghost. I've been flying fighters for 20 years. I've never seen anything like what you did up there. You were outnumbered, ambushed, low on fuel, and you still killed everything in the sky. Just doing my job, ma'am. Your job involves doing impossible things on a regular basis? Martinez smiled. I flew that extraction thinking we were going into a meat grinder. Then I got word that Ghost had cleared the sky. We didn't fire a shot, didn't see a single enemy fighter, because you'd already killed them all. Emma shrugged. That was the mission. Clear the sky. I cleared it. Keller handed her a bottle of water. Debrief in 30 minutes. Then you're grounded for 12 hours mandatory crew rest. After that, he paused. We have another mission. Another impossible situation. They're specifically asking for you. They always ask for me, Emma said, because I'm the one who shows up when missions are impossible. The debrief lasted 3 hours. Emma walked them through every engagement, every decision, every kill. The gun camera footage showed air combat that most pilots would never see in their entire careers. Missile shots at extreme range, gun kills at speeds that made targeting nearly impossible, tactical decisions made in split seconds that meant the difference between victory and death. The critical moment was when you realized it was an ambush, Keller said, reviewing the footage. You could have disengaged, should have disengaged according to doctrine. If I'd disengaged, the enemy fighters would have intercepted dagger flight. Mission would have failed. Marines would have died. So you engaged 10 aircraft solo despite being ambushed and outnumbered? Yes, sir. That's either brilliant or insane. Emma smiled slightly. I've been told those aren't mutually exclusive. Martinez spoke up. The part where you chased down those last two fighters despite being critically low on fuel, you know you almost died, right? Yes, ma'am. But if I'd let them escape, they would have reported our capabilities. That information would have killed Americans in future engagements. So you chose to risk your life to protect future missions. That's the job. Martinez shook her head in amazement. Most pilots I know would have disengaged the moment they went Winchester on missiles. You stayed and fought with just the cannon, then you went after runners despite having no fuel. What makes you do that? Emma thought about that question, about the Marines she'd never met who were alive because she'd stayed, about the pilots who would survive future missions because the enemy didn't know everything about F-22 capabilities. Someone has to do the impossible things, she said finally. Someone has to be the person who shows up when the situation is hopeless and makes it possible. I'm good at being that person. Later that night, Emma sat alone in her quarters, cleaning her flight gear and reviewing the mission in her mind. 10 kills. A new record for a single engagement. Her total career kills was now 21. More than any active Air Force pilot, more than most pilots achieved in entire careers. But the numbers didn't matter to her. What mattered was the mission. The Marines who'd gotten home. The strike package that had completed their objective without losing anyone. The future operations that would succeed because the enemy didn't have complete intelligence. Her phone buzzed. Encrypted message from command. Major Lane. Excellent work today. New mission brief uploaded to your secure device. Review and report for briefing at 0600. This one is even more challenging than today. We need Ghost. Emma opened the mission brief and started reading. Hostile territory, surface-to-air missiles, enemy fighters with better training than today's opposition. Objectives that would require penetrating airspace that intelligence said was impenetrable. She smiled. Impenetrable airspace was her specialty. Because that was the thing about being Ghost. You went places you weren't supposed to go, killed enemies who thought they were safe, and accomplished missions that everyone said were impossible. And then you did it again the next day. Emma Lane, call sign Ghost, set down the mission brief and started planning how she'd accomplish the next impossible thing. Because impossible was just another word for Tuesday. The next mission, 3 days later. The briefing was classified at the highest levels. Emma sat in a secure room with 4 other people, Major Keller, Colonel Martinez, a Navy SEAL commander she'd never met, and an intelligence officer whose name badge was literally redacted. The situation is complex, Keller began. We have human intelligence assets behind enemy lines who need immediate extraction. They have information that's critically time-sensitive. But enemy air defenses have been reinforced specifically because they know we attempted an operation in this region 3 days ago. The intelligence officer pulled up satellite imagery. Surface-to-air missile batteries here, here, and here. Early warning radar covering all approach vectors, and 12 enemy fighters on strip alert at this airfield. They can be airborne in under 3 minutes if we're detected. The SEAL commander leaned forward. My team can handle the ground extraction, but we need the sky clear. Can't have enemy fighters strafing us while we're extracting the assets. Everyone looked at Emma. 1 F-22 against 12 fighters and integrated air defenses, Emma said. You want me to clear the sky again? We want Ghost to do what Ghost does, Keller said. Be invisible. Strike first. Kill everything before they know you're there. Emma studied the map. The enemy had learned from the last engagement. They'd reinforced, repositioned, prepared for American stealth tactics. This wouldn't be another turkey shoot. This would be a knife fight against prepared defenses. When do I launch? 4 hours. This one's going to be dangerous, Emma. She smiled. They always are. The approach was at night, flying at wave-top altitude to stay under enemy radar. Emma's F-22 skimmed across dark water at 500 knots, invisible to radar, invisible to infrared, a ghost moving through darkness. Ghost, Overwatch. Enemy air defenses are active. They're expecting us. Copy, Overwatch. They can expect all they want. Won't help them see me. She pulled up to 200 feet, then 1,000, climbing gradually while her sensors mapped enemy positions. The surface-to-air missile sites were exactly where intelligence said they'd be. The early warning radar was sweeping patterns across the sky. But nobody was looking down at wave-top altitude. Nobody expected threats from that vector. Emma climbed to 15,000 feet, positioned herself between the enemy airfield and the extraction zone, and waited. Ghost, Overwatch. SEAL team is beginning extraction. Estimate 10 minutes until they're clear. Copy. Ghost in position, waiting for enemy response. The response came 90 seconds later. Emma's radar showed contacts launching from the enemy airfield, fighters scrambling to intercept something they'd detected near the extraction zone. 12 aircraft, exactly as intelligence predicted, all heading toward the SEALs. Emma armed her missiles. Overwatch Ghost. 12 bandits airborne, engaging. She fired her first missile before the enemy fighters had finished forming up. The AMRAAM tracked across 20 miles of darkness and killed the lead fighter before his radar even showed the threat. Emma fired 3 more missiles in rapid succession. 3 more fighters died before they understood they were under attack. 4 kills in 15 seconds, 8 fighters remaining. Now they knew she was there. Now they were searching, trying to find the invisible aircraft that was killing them. Emma dove to the deck, accelerated to 600 knots, and repositioned while the enemy fighters searched empty sky where she'd been. Ghost Overwatch. SEAL team is under fire. Enemy ground forces are closing on their position. They need that sky clear now. Emma climbed back to altitude, found the enemy fighters still searching for her, and fired 2 more missiles. 2 more kills, 6 fighters remaining. The remaining enemy pilots made a smart decision. They split into 3 pairs and came at her from different vectors, trying to force her to defend against multiple threats. Emma picked the closest pair and fired her last 2 missiles. Both fighters died. 4 enemies left, 0 missiles remaining, just the cannon now, and the extraction was still 3 minutes from completion. Emma turned toward the nearest pair of fighters, lit her afterburners, and dove at them at supersonic speed. The enemy pilots saw her coming on radar and turned to engage. Fatal mistake. Emma pulled into a vertical climb at the last second, the F-22 going straight up while the enemy fighters tried to follow. They couldn't match her climb rate. She rolled inverted at 25,000 feet and came back down behind them. Gun kill on the first fighter. 3-second burst. The aircraft exploded. The wingman tried to run. Emma caught him 8 seconds later. 2-second burst. Another kill. 9 kills total, 2 fighters remaining, and the extraction was almost complete. Emma found the last 2 fighters heading directly toward the SEAL team's position, probably planning to strafe the landing zone. She got there first. She dove from 20,000 feet, accelerating through Mach 1, and opened fire on the lead fighter at extreme range. The burst was long, 5 seconds, but at that range she needed the extra rounds. The fighter's wing came off. The aircraft cartwheeled through the sky. The final enemy fighter saw his wingman die and tried to abort his attack run. Too late. Emma was already in firing position. Final burst, last of her ammunition. The fighter exploded, 12 enemy fighters destroyed, 0 missiles and 0 cannon ammunition remaining. Mission complete. Overwatch Ghost, all bandits destroyed, sky is clear, Winchester on everything. Copy Ghost, SEAL team reports successful extraction, assets are secure, you just saved lives again. Emma turned for home, flying through darkness, another impossible mission accomplished. The landing was quiet. No crowds this time. This mission was too classified for celebration. Emma taxied to the secure hangar where only cleared personnel were allowed. Major Keller was waiting. 12 kills. Another perfect mission. 0 friendly casualties. The SEALs make it out. All of them, plus the intelligence assets, because you cleared the sky. Emma climbed down from the cockpit, exhausted but satisfied. That's what I do. I know, which is why we keep sending you on impossible missions. Keller handed her a folder. Next one's in 72 hours. Even more challenging than this one. Emma took the folder without opening it. They're always more challenging. That's why you call me. That's why we call Ghost, Keller corrected, because when the mission is impossible, we send the pilot who doesn't believe in impossible. Emma sat in her quarters that night, thinking about the 22 kills she now had. More than any active pilot, more than most pilots would ever achieve. But the numbers didn't define her. The missions did. The lives saved, the objectives accomplished, the impossible things made possible. Somewhere in the world, hostile forces were planning operations, building defenses, training pilots, thinking they understood how air combat worked. They didn't know about Ghost. By the time they figured it out, they'd be dead. Emma Lane opened the next mission folder and started planning how she'd accomplish another impossible thing. Because that's what Ghost did. They appeared in impossible places. They did impossible things. They saved lives that everyone else had written off as lost. And then they vanished back into the darkness, waiting for the next time someone needed the impossible to become real. She was very good at being a ghost. Tomorrow, she'd prove it again. 3 months later, Emma stood in a different secure briefing room at the Pentagon, surrounded by generals and admirals whose names were classified and whose decisions shaped global military strategy. Major Lane, a 4-star general, said, studying the mission report spread across the table. 22 confirmed kills across multiple engagements, multiple impossible missions accomplished. You've fundamentally changed how we think about employing the F-22. Emma stood at attention. Just doing my job, sir. Your job involves rewriting tactical doctrine every time you fly. The general smiled slightly. We're creating a new program, classified at the highest levels. We need pilots who can operate independently in denied airspace, make split-second decisions with strategic implications, and accomplish objectives that conventional forces can't touch. You want more ghosts, Emma said. We want you to train them, pass on what you know, create a cadre of pilots who can do what you do. Emma thought about that, about the missions she'd flown, the kills she'd made, the lives she'd saved, about being invisible until the moment you needed to be the deadliest thing in the sky. I'll train them, sir. But they need to understand something first. What's that, Major? Being Ghost isn't about the aircraft or the weapons or the tactics. It's about showing up when the situation is hopeless and making it possible. It's about doing impossible things because someone has to. It's about being the person who appears when everyone else has given up. The general nodded slowly. Can you teach that? Emma smiled. I can teach them to fly. I can teach them to fight. I can teach them to be invisible. She paused. Whether they can become ghosts, that's something they'll have to prove in combat. Fair enough. Welcome to your new assignment, Major. Time to create more legends. Emma thought about the pilots she'd train, the missions they'd fly, the impossible things they'd accomplish. The world needed ghosts, she'd make sure they got them. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales of courage.